Chaos Theory by Tessa Crowley. Brought to you by Leanne Audio. Chapter 9. The story of love is hello and goodbye until we meet again. Jimi Hendrix. You'll write, won't you? Draco looks up from his bag where he's packing up the last of his books he'd been reading. Underneath their feet, the Hogwarts Express groans and rattles as it makes its arduous deceleration into the station. Of course I will, Draco answers. Why wouldn't I? Harry frowns and shakes his head. I'm half afraid that this whole year's been just a dream, he answers. That the minute I get off this train, it'll all be over. Not all good things are too good to be true. Allow yourself at least a little optimism. It takes a moment before Harry smiles, but Draco's pleased to see that the smile is genuine. He's gotten quite good at making Harry smile, he's discovered, and has found that he likes doing it. I'll miss you, Draco, he says, and before Draco can answer, Harry's closing the gap between them and pulling him into a hug. Harry smells like cedar and soap. Draco is not, and has never been, a person who likes physical contact, due in large part, he suspects, to the fact that he simply didn't get a lot of it growing up. His father had always been standoffish, especially after the early development of Draco's mind, and his mother, doting as she is, prefers to show her love through gifts and cooing. Professor Snape is something of a deviation, with his occasional affectionate touches to the head or shoulder, or even hugs, but they are quite rare. And, as in all things, Professor Snape has always been the exception to Draco's rule. Mostly, and by most people, Draco does not like being touched. But this is actually quite nice, Draco realizes with some surprise, and before he lets himself think about it too much, he returns the hug. There's a great scraping of metal, followed by a loud hiss, and the train grinds to a halt. You'll see me sooner than you think, Draco tells him. Harry pulls back with the question in his eyes, but Draco smiles and heads out of the compartment before he can ask it. No sense in ruining a good surprise. Students are flooding into the narrow corridor and out of the train, a sea of contrast in color now that all the uniforms have been shed for street clothes. When they empty out onto the platform, it's to the dull thrum of indistinct conversation, punctuated by occasional happy squeals of reunion. It is not hard to pick out his father in the crowd. It never is. Lucius Malfoy is the tallest, blondest, best-dressed person in every room he walks into. Draco spots him at once, and carves a path through the ever-thickening crowd towards him. Draco, he says over the rumbling chorus of voices. He's looking down his long, upturned nose at him, fingernails drumming on the silver-plated head of his cane. Father, Draco returns. A good year, I trust. Draco shrugs. Good enough. He'd received the top marks in his class, but that really wasn't something worth mentioning. Your mother and I missed you at Christmas. Sorry, he says. Terrible head cold. And Easter. It was a really long head cold. Draco, he says sternly. Fine, you caught me, Draco sighs. I actually made a friend who didn't have a family to go home to for the holidays, so I thought it better to stay with him. I hope we can move past the disgust you must feel for me now, making friends and being nice. Lucius's mouth twitches downward in a sneer. A friend, he repeats. A fellow Ravenclaw? Wow, Draco says. That couldn't have been more than 20 seconds. I thought you wouldn't bring up my house for at least 3 minutes. His father sighs and rubs the bridge of his nose between his thumb and forefinger. Can we go home now? Draco asks. Yes, he grumbles, sticking out his arm for a side-along. Draco takes it, and just before they vanish, he looks toward the entrance of the platform, where he sees Harry and his trunk and his owl cage vanishing through the wall alone. He thinks about what Harry is going back to, and comforts himself with the knowledge that he will see Harry sooner than he thinks. Then, with a loud crack and the smell of ozone, they disapparate.